Hey there friends, I just wanted to explain that the paper I'm using in this video is not white paper, it's sort of like a pale brown paper. You should be able to find it at art supply stores or craft stores near you, and just wanted to point that out because I was an idiot and I forgot to mention it during the course of the video. But if you want to achieve some of the effects that I do in this video, you're going to want to start with paper, not necessarily of this shade, but some shade other than white. Alright, let's go ahead and get on with the video. Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. Back in 2012 I did a video on how to draw the head of a dragon. People were happy with that video, but I always felt that I could have done more in terms of talking about the texture, the shading, the sort of finishing touches, and so that's why I'm revisiting this topic to cover that sort of second half of the drawing process in greater detail. Now, people like to know what size I'm working at, so let me go ahead and tell you this box here is about 3.5 inches on all sides. That works out to just under 9 centimeters. So that can help you if you want to follow along in that way. I'm going to go ahead and put down a few basic guidelines. Alright, well, hopefully you can see that this is the upper jaw and the beginnings of the lower jaw in profile. If you've got that square in place to begin with, that can help you. These sort of guidelines here can help you in terms of getting those lines into place. I will eventually be drawing the other side of the mouth, you know, this open mouth of the dragon right here. But for now, let me go ahead and finish off drawing the rest of the lower jaw. Alright, so you can see this basic shape here of the lower jaw. To me it looks a little bit like a chicken leg. I don't know if that's going to help you very much, but anyway, notice how it passes that line. It's sort of centered a little bit on that line, this beefy area of the the fresh, delicious chicken leg. And then here we have the lower line of the neck. Now, one thing to notice is that I'm having the top part of the head be more or less a continuation of the neck, which is pretty different from the last time that I covered this subject. I just, I didn't want to do an absolute repeat of that previous dragon. So let's go ahead now. I think it's time to get, we'll get the eye in place and then also the horns. So you can see that this area where the eye is going to be is very much like an almond shape. Everything gets compared to food around here. But in any case, this is going to be very much an eye socket. I'm going to have the eye recessed inside an eye socket here. And then you can see that the horn begins just a little over to the left from this corner of that initial box. And, I should say, make the horns any way you want. You don't have to follow any of this exactly the way I'm doing it. I'm just sort of giving pointers for people who do like to follow along that way. So maybe the last couple of things I need to do here is get the nostril in place, and then, as I said before, get the other side of the mouth. Alright, so we've got the nostril in place right there, pretty small compared to the eye socket as you would expect it to be, and then this line over here indicating the other side of the mouth, and pretty much suggesting that we're getting a little bit of a 3/4 point of view going on here. Well, I'm going to knock it off with the time lapse for a moment and start adding some extra guidelines in real time. I want this eye socket to be surrounded by a kind of ridge of scales that I'm going to get to eventually, but let's begin by just putting in an extra, sort of echoes that line over to the one side, and that's going to go all the way across here, and I may eventually sort of modify this line so as to make the brow, I guess you would call it, stand out, sort of break that contour a little bit. And within the eye socket itself, we are going to see the eye, and considerably smaller. I do want to have it, have a little bit of that sinister, angry look to it. So I'm going to have sort of have it tilting down a bit. We can get into more of these details later on. Definitely we want to get another horn over here on the other side. Maybe before I do that, though, I'm going to flesh out the base of the horn. Rather than just having a horn pop out of the head randomly, I think you do need some sense of structure underneath, and that's probably based on the animal kingdom, any animals that have horns. But as I said, since we have a sort of a 3/4 point of view going on here, we're going to see an indication of that other horn on the other side, and maybe just a little bit of that, the base over And over here in the front, in the snoutel region, I'm going to actually break the contour much more substantially and sort of hook back a little bit. I should say that this this design for the dragon is very much inspired by the Skyrim dragon. I was looking at various illustrations, various ways of drawing dragons, and actually the one that I liked most was not a drawing at all, but you know, the sort of CG creation for Skyrim. I have to remember, if I'm doing a sort of a three-quarter point of view, that maybe both sides become visible here. Both sides of the, what would you call that? The nasal ridge, the protrusion coming out here. And then, you know, I don't want to get too much into, you know, everybody have your structure be exactly the way mine is, but just to sort of let you know, I'm going to eventually be dividing this into sort of 2 rows of scales. And then this continues back along until it maybe begins to vanish a little into the back of the jaw. And speaking of horns, let's go ahead and get, I'm going to get a row of horns going on here. I think there's probably space for about 4. And my idea is to have them curving upwards. Now this is, I would say, pretty much 100% decorative. I mean, what is the use of these horns back here behind the jaw other than to look cool? But hey, you know, when you're drawing a dragon, having it look cool is important. And I'm going to come along here, and each time I'm going to have it sort of fan out a little bit and also diminish in size, these 4 different horns here. And that's just sort of, again, a sort of a decorative thing. To me, it looks better if they are not all exactly the same size and not all pointing in exactly the same direction. And let's see, what else do I want to do here? I guess I could talk a little bit about the teeth. Before I get to that, I want to do an indication of sinewy flesh that sort of joins the upper jaw and lower jaw. And then maybe we can get a gum line down here. You know, I was looking for extra reference at photos of crocodiles. And it was interesting, you know, that it helped me get an idea about spacing the teeth, you know, the number of teeth, the size of them, and so forth. But I did notice with the crocodile, there isn't like this gum line. It isn't like a human, you know, where there's the lip and then there's the gum line. I think with crocodiles, it's just one and the same thing, this sort of area here. But anyway, enough of that. Let me go ahead and start drawing some of these teeth. The Skyrim dragon's teeth were really protruding outward at an angle. As I said, I looked at the crocodile teeth and I sort of preferred that angle. So I'm mixing and matching different sources of reference here. But I noticed that, and I'm sure I said this in the earlier video, that there wasn't this super clear pattern. You had large teeth suddenly, like back here there might be quite a large tooth that emerges, and then between them and the other one, a tiny one, and certainly not evenly spaced. So I would say in a way you can sort of allow yourself the freedom of drawing in, you know, the teeth any way you like, basically. And up here I noticed, and I think this is maybe based on the crocodile references, that some of them were beginning to sort of point back as they went along, sort of curving inward. So you had a sort of a straight down direction for these teeth back here, and then as you came out here, they seemed to be curving backwards in toward the mouth. Quite different from that Skyrim dragon, as I said, that had the teeth jutting outward. But again, you know, you should feel free to draw the teeth, draw any aspect of the dragon the way you like. That's part of the fun of drawing these creatures. You have the creative freedom to, you know, no one can tell you you're wrong. But in the age of the internet, someone will tell you you're wrong. You can kind of bank on that. The Skyrim dragon gave me this idea of an irregularly shaped upper lip, if that's the right word here. And so I'm sort of adopting that into my design. Some of you may have noticed that there's an almost like hawk-like aspect to this, the shape at the front here. And And that kind of gets repeated down here as well, although I suppose that's just curving around. Oh, I didn't get the other teeth on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and get that. Oh, you know, I had an idea. Last time I did not do any indication of a tongue. And so I thought we could get that in here and get a dragon tongue. Sort of gracefully extending, not completely outside of the mouth, but kind of right up to the edge of it, I suppose you'd say. Last time, that previous dragon had more horns than I intended to put into this one, but I did see pretty consistently in different dragon designs some sort of horns at the bottom of the jaw. Again, I believe just a decorative thing. And maybe we're getting closer to... You know what, I'll show you my plan to get sort of armor-like scales. 3 different sections. So I'm going to put a line that comes down like this, and I'm just going to sort of quickly do an indication here of where I intend to put these broad plates almost. And again, sort of fanning out a little. I like to do that. To me, it sort of helps give a rounded look to it. But over here, I'm doing a second section. And even dividing that, sort of is made up of 2 different kind of tectonic plates. And this is where I think in that last video I decided that the term snake belly was what I was using to describe these plates. And then also it started to sound like the name of a alt-rock band, Snake Belly. Yeah, I was into Snake Belly back in the day. They're not as good as they used to be. Ever since they did that Target commercial. They totally sold out, man. 2006 Snake Belly would be embarrassed by 2015 Snake Belly. I think I've run this into the ground. Let's move on. Anyway, these plates here, again, are, I feel, serving to give a feeling of the surface, you know, by drawing these repeating lines that go across the neck area. It helps people understand the sort of three-dimensionality of that surface. But I thought what I would do up here is to have these break into slightly triangle-like tips so as to create an area where we have the classic... I don't know, they're not horns. What are they? These things that come up across the neck. And that always reminds me of, like, dinosaurs. But in this illustration, there's not so much space for that, but I'm going to get at least a couple of them in here. Maybe you can see just between the 2 horns as they diminish in size. And that kind of gets us to most of the basic guidelines. Like I said, I wanted to allow time in this video for doing more of the finishing touch stuff. So forgive me, I'm going to do a fair amount of things in time-lapse right now so as to speed us along to the later sections of the video where I can take some time and introduce you to techniques for adding detail, shading, this what I call the final polishing phase, and so forth. So bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and do quite a bit here in time-lapse, but then hopefully balance it out by doing more real-time toward the end of the video. Okay, so sorry about so much of that being in time-lapse, but I'm going to do just a little bit here in real time. And I've pulled out my black Prismacolor, I should say trusty black Prismacolor, and I'm going to start doing outlining here, but I wanted to show how I'm going to render this lizard skin area here. You can probably see, even in the time-lapse, that I was just drawing a bunch of circles of fairly random quality before just to fill in that space. And now I feel like I can take my time and start to refine those, you know, what were originally just quick little circles, and try to make them a little more octagonal, or really quite randomly shaped, but have them feel like they're interlocking, as you see in actual lizard skin. In fact, I did look at reference of like Komodo dragon and even iguana and so forth to get some sense. And you know, actually, what I'm going to do here on the fly, I feel like this should not actually be lizard skin. This should repeat the pattern that I established there. So my apologies for sort of altering things as I go. But in any case, you can see that some of it is done with the pencil at the beginning, and then a lot of the detail comes in little by little with this black Prismacolor, this colored pencil, as I go along and sort of take my time and render things a little more carefully. Now, sadly, for me to do what I intend to do with this video, and that is to cover more of the final polishing phase stuff, I do have to do all of this black line art stuff also in time-lapse. Unavoidable, sadly. But let me go ahead and finish that up, and then we'll be back and start talking about coloring and shading and stuff like that. Alright, so I've got all the lines in place, and now I'm pulling out my touch marker from Shinhan Art. This is the I always forget, WG3 Warm Gray. But you know, you can sort of look around and find a marker that is similar in color. You don't have to necessarily find this one, but I'm going to only be using this one marker as my coloring tool, basically, for the entire video, until later on when I get to my beloved gouache for the highlights. But this is going to help sort of deepen the area of the mouth, push it back, and basically I'm going to be choosing between two different ways of using this. What you're seeing me do right now is the sort of areas of deep shadow where I just go completely in, pressing down and darkening with all my might, pretty much. But then over here, watch what I'm doing for shading this in. I'm going to start dark at the bottom, but then sort of lift up as I go and let it become almost a shading tool of indicating the shadow toward the bottom, and you know, letting it be more lightly colored toward the top. And that sort of process extends down here, where I imagine it being even darker, you know, with the light coming from above. Less and less light is going to be reaching down here to the very bottom. So basically, yeah, we got these two different approaches. One of really coloring it all the way in areas where I'm confident I want it to be quite dark. Like, for example, this area of the eye socket is going to be fairly dark all the way around, although I'm probably going to go for darker at the very top of this area than at the bottom. And other areas you can kind of maybe find a midway point, like I'm lifting up as I color this undersection of the horn, not pressing all the way down, kind of building up a midway tone. But all of these areas where I did the lizard skin, I'm just going to maybe go over once or twice, not trying to make it super dark, but definitely offering contrast with the way I'm drawing these plates, these tectonic plates. Mark, that is not how you use the word tectonic. Admit it, you don't even know what the word tectonic means. Okay, you caught me. It sounds so cool, though. Maybe that was the name of Snakebelly's first album, Tectonic Plates. Man, those were the days. I thought they were going to make rock and roll relevant again. Now look at them. I've turned into the hipster, the former fan. Yeah, I still got my Snake Belly t-shirt. I can't wear it anymore, though. Too embarrassing. Anyway, I think you get the basic idea of how I'm using the marker to add most of the coloring, the tone. I don't know if you would even call this coloring because of the, you know, it being gray, but I'm going to go ahead and in time-lapse finish up this sort of coloring phase, and then we can come back and start refining things a little with the black Prismacolor. All right, so I thought before I completely wind down this marker part, I would stop and talk a little, as I do this in real time about my thinking. I put down the basic layer of color, and now I'm going back in and sort of trying to add a bit of texture to things. I felt like these plates looked, without any texture to them, they started to almost look robotic, like this was some sort of dinosaur machine rather than an actual dinosaur. So I felt I needed to go in and add a bit more texture. And sure enough, we are starting to get into what I would call the sort of, maybe not the final polishing phase, but we're definitely getting into more detailed stuff here. And very important to understand your light source, because I know the light's coming from above. Then I'm always putting, if I'm choosing to build up a little more shadow, it's always going to be on these lower sections. So it is, of course, always very helpful to keep in mind your light source and let that inform, where you put areas of darkness. You may have noticed that here on the horns, I've decided that the sort of lower part of each horn segment gets darkness, and that includes this shaded area. I have to sort of be consistent there. And probably down here as well, they all seem to be the same type of horn structure. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some tips there in terms of using the marker to not only add color but add some texture and maybe weathering and so forth. And now, as I said, it's time to pull out that trusty black Prismacolor, and I'm going to start refining things a bit more. Let me zoom in. Change focus so that you can see me do these details. Okay, so I'm going to show different ways of using the black Prismacolor here to further refine the illustration. Right now I'm just going in and adding shading that is going to help convey that this is the recessed area of the eye socket. But you see me also coming up here and using kind of circular motions, and I'm not pressing down very hard at all with the pencil to just sort of create extra shading, and that's going to make these little areas look more and more round. Let's see, yeah, I think I could do the same thing down here. And this can also begin contributing to a sense of texture. Like I was saying, trying to keep this from looking like robotic metal plates, to give a little more of a sense of irregularities in the surface and so forth. I might like darken a little more here, right in the middle, and begin to, little by little, create a sense of there being imperfections. You could even do some linear work, in the horns here, where I use the pencil in its more traditional, capability of producing lines. But definitely in some areas I'm going to be going like bold black. Let me just go ahead and do this here on the inside of the mouth, pushing down basically as hard as I can to make this interior section deep inside the mouth get really dark. So that gives you a sense, hopefully, of different ways that the pencil can be used. Of course, once you've pushed down really hard in an area like this, you have dulled the point considerably of the pencil. So if you want to go from here into doing detail work, probably best to stop and sharpen the pencil. Well, hopefully that gives you some sense of what I'm going to be doing during this next stage with the black colored pencil. Go ahead and do this in time lapse, and then we'll come back and do the fun part of adding the white gouache. Alright, well, I'm done refining things with the black colored pencil, and now it's time to pull out the white gouache and add the gouaches to this illustration. And because the color is sort of brown, pale brown to begin with, it's really going to help these white highlights pop and hopefully create a nice effect of three-dimensionality with the whole illustration. The one thing I think you need to really keep in mind as you add white highlights like this is to stay focused on the light source, and remember that your primary areas of bold white are going to be up here near the top, And so I'll just go ahead and like fill in a bit of the horn here that I intend to be quite white colored. But if we're way down here, for example, I'm not going to be doing heavy-duty highlights. I might just do like a little hint of a highlight here along the sort of plates or whatever down here. So I think the challenge is to know when to stop as you are, adding highlights down here and further down here. Maybe time to not put any at all. You can begin to hint at them as you imagine the surface turning back toward the light, being in a position where light can hit it pretty solidly. So that would be my main piece of advice there. Sometimes you want a very hard edge to your highlight, for example, like the tongue here. I think I can commit to a very bold, white line almost, because that's supposed to be shiny. The tongue is supposed to be shiny. Whereas for the area of these plates, I'm probably going to let it be a little more washed out. I don't know if I can do that right now with the brush loaded up the way it is, but I suppose the teeth you can go in pretty bold with them being at least a little bit shiny smooth. But yeah, let me sort of I'll wash out the brush and get. Hopefully be able to show you an area that's not quite so bold. Like for the plates, I don't want this area to be so hard-edged. I don't want the white the way it is over here. I want it to sort of blend off. So I guess I wanted to show you those two different ways of using the white gouache. Not every time you apply it is it like super thick, and even at its most intense, you can see here it goes from a bold white to a fairly pale shade. Anyway, hopefully that is enough in terms of those tips. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this white gouache phase, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well there's my video on illustrating a dragon's head. Let me know what you thought about it. I'm just going through here making a few final tweaks, refining things yet further with this black Prismacolor. You do have to be careful about doing things after the white gouache stage, because as your hand goes across it you can discolor things and so forth. But I do believe it's time for me to thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books like Brody's Ghost and Miki Falls, my graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2, my how to draw books, and coming up May 5th, the Realism Challenge, available now as a pre-order. And next week, hopefully, I will have a interesting little announcement to make related to this book. But for now, let me go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.